Cipla, and I welcome everyone to a very important, fabulous milestone event today. Are you wondering what it is? But before I start, let me wish you all a very, very happy Women's Day. And I hope there are some men in the audience as well. So I wish to you a very happy Women's Day to all the women who are in your life. You may not have a better half or your wife, but you definitely have a mother. So happy Women's Day. Let us all begin on this very important day. So what's so big about Women's Day, right? So everyone has their own opinion, what's so big, depending on where you are in your personal journey. For me, it's very important because it is a date, it's marked for celebration, to recognize all those women who have toiled, have become first or second. There's no big deal about being first, you could be last as long as you have done what you set out to do. The last person in the marathon people still cheer for. So the numbering is not important. What is important is, have I given it my best? Am I the very best I can be based on God's potential that He has given me? So to me, this day is fabulous. One can argue every day is a Women's Day, and why not? But welcome everybody to this very, very important day. And what we've started is a series, and today is the first of the series, and it's going to be Choose to Challenge the Expert. I'm not going to tell you who the expert is today. You're going to be absolutely blown away when you meet our expert for today. So before we start, let me just tell you a little bit about my crazy self, right? Many of you know me and many of you don't know me. So what's so crazy about me? I always wanted to do something big. When you're 10, something big may be just jumping off a wall where your parents told you not to do. Or it may be riding a cycle on concrete, which your parents told you not to do. So that's been me, this renegade that I didn't even know I had. And lo and behold, when I finished my undergraduate, I knew I didn't want to stay in India. Those days, India wasn't where it was today, or where it is today. I wanted to go outside, and the good Lord was very kind. I went off to US and started working as a chemist. All what I had was an undergraduate degree, which isn't big, it's not a big deal. Anyways, only girl in a QC lab. First job. So you can only imagine how terrible it was in terms of fear if you allowed it to come. OSHA rules were very, very minimal. I mean, you could use chloroform, you didn't need to use it under a hood. And if you told your male colleagues, they'll be like, well, go work in a perfume factory. I kid you not. True story. So that's where I started. And many of you know where I am today. Why did I reach here? God's grace, extremely supportive family, friends, good bosses, and strangers who don't mind helping you. Because, it's with every hand that we reach the final steps. With every bead that we make this beautiful garland of pearls. So that's where I am where I am. But what I did know is I wanted to be the best I could be. I compete with myself. So that's a little bit about myself. And all these 35 plus years in the US, it was time to come back to the Desh, my country, who has given me so much. My roots are here. And what a fantastic place to come back to, Cipla. It doesn't get better. Because the ethos of Cipla, the caring for life, is completely congruent with who I am inside. That's what Cipla has given me, is an opportunity to be more of myself. This better than better of yourself, you have to find places. And when we talk about support system, today's event is also a support system. Look at all of you taking the time to log on. Look at COVID. Look at everything. But have we stopped? No, we haven't. So woe to the women. Now enough of me. I'd like to introduce you. Remember I told you, I hope you have your seatbelts on because you're going to be blown away. To a fantastic, charismatic, talented, well accomplished. I mean, the list just goes on and on. It is my greatest pleasure ladies and gentlemen, because I am hoping there are some gentlemen in the audience, this very wonderful, extremely inspirational leader, Anuradha Das Mathur. I really miss being live because, we could have her walk up the stairs and you could actually see her, but you'll be able to see her and hear her soon. So let me give you a little bit about why I am so humbled and inspired to introduce Anuradha to you. I just have a few things because if I said everything she did, we'd need many hours and the time allotted is short. She's the founder and dean of Vedika Scholars Program for Women. It's a unique women's only management and leadership program. She's the founder and director of 9.9 Media, India's leading niche media company, and the managing director, CFO, Collective, a boutique media company that serves India's senior finance community. Anuradha is also a senior advisor to the Albright Stonebridge Group in India. That's not all. She was selected along with 24 other women globally for the prestigious Global Women's Mentoring Partnership Program, a joint initiative by Fortune and the US Department of State. Her passion for improving women in their participation in the workforce took roots during this program. So once again, let's welcome Anuradha, and it is an absolute delight to have this conversation with you today as we touch upon different facets on leadership and the conversations about diversity, and most importantly, to learn from you, your insights, what drove you, what took you to such great heights. So welcome, Anuradha. So
it's my absolute pleasure to be here. And Ranjana, you should be talking to people at Cipla. I mean, there's just pieces of the jigsaw. We all put it together. Thank you for that very, very warm and honestly superlative description, which I have to say sounds way better than it is. So I keep telling people that what binds us all together is much more than what sets us apart. So I think somewhere behind this resume, we are all so similar in the challenges we face, the things we can do, and what we want from our life. So it's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you.
So thank you, Anuradha, for accepting this discussion time with us. So something that is very intriguing, is it that we are taking this too far and we continue talking about women? Is it something over the years that we should, now it's time, someone may say that, enough is already enough. Should we continue this with this agenda? And what do you think? Should we be talking about this?
I want to start with the short answer is yes, I think it is. We are still very far from the goalpost. But I'll come to that and why I believe that in a minute. But I want to start, Ranjana, with saying that, I grew up a tomboy, an absolute tomboy. My mom's an IS officer. So she could drive a Jeep, shoot a gun, stitch clothes, bring us up, put flowers in the house, bake a cake. So I grew up with absolutely no notion of women having to make choices. Women could do everything. They had to work. They of course did stuff in the house. They were pivotal to their family. So this very, very focused effort to give women opportunities, to make them feel like that was quite novel to me. And I remember in my late teens and early 20s, I was actually very impatient with women who didn't get on with it. Because I used to think either you did it or you made excuses. It's only when I went to this program that I was made aware of how different the world is for many other women, the world that I inhabited. And I say this often, but I was gutted with guilt because I was privileged and I had used my privilege. Instead of paying that privilege forward, I had used that privilege to remain blinkered. It was a bit like saying, I'm not poor, so there's no poverty in the world.
Yeah.
And that program taught me that lives that women have and the challenges they face to do anything outside the norm that had been described for them was very, very different. And I'll give you now some data points to tell you how I got so convinced that efforts to make the world more equal for women, and by that same extension also more equal for men, was really the way to go. And I'll give you a few examples. So, these Ivy League colleges that define the epitome of good education and higher education in the world, that Yale started admitting women only in 1969. Princeton in 1969, Harvard in 1977, and Columbia as late as 1981. Right? These opportunities in the world were just denied to women. Switzerland, which is one of the richest countries in the world, started giving rights to women to vote, in the last few decades. And the last canton in Switzerland allowed women to vote only in the 1990s. Let's say this is education and vote, so, women didn't really inhabit these domains. I want to give you an example about orchestras. As late as 1970, only 5% of musicians performing in the top 5 orchestras in the United States were women. Today, they are close to, I think they're 35-40%. Do you know what made that happen? The Boston Symphony Orchestra introduced blind audition. And the moment people couldn't see who was playing the music or the instrument, the numbers of women went up. Then there is the more, the more recent data on gender wage gap. Right now, if we continue as we are, it'll take us over 100 years for men and women to earn the same thing for doing the same job. Women in senior positions. You and I get invited to speak because there aren't that many women in senior leadership. 9% of CEO jobs, 21% of senior management roles, when we are 50% of the world.
Yeah.
So I think there's lots of progress. And I would stop at this point to say that, when depending on who's looking, the change seems too rapid or the change seems too slow. So I think what has changed humongously in the last 20 years is the way we think. The majority of women, I would imagine, on this session today, what we want of our lives, what we think about families, what we think about marriage, what we think about our roles, what we think about our desire or ability to dream. This has changed more than pretty much anything else on this planet. And everyone else is struggling to keep pace, whether it is men, whether it is organizations, whether it is society, whether it is families, whether it is organizations, governments. They don't know what to do with the kind of change that women want for themselves. So I think for other people, the change is too rapid. For us, I think the pace is still too slow. So I do think that we need programs and initiatives because I think we still have a very long way to go, even though we've come some distance from when I started working or you started working.
Anuradha, thank you for that. It's very insightful because you hit it on the nail when you said that depending on where you are, thank you for sharing the fact that you were a privileged person and you were able to see the world from your eyes. And congratulations on admitting on camera that you didn't know what the world was outside. And I think many of us grew up like that. And that's what the challenge is. And that's what we should be challenging, the status quo, challenging the stereotypes, challenging the perceptions, challenging the ideas. And you would think US, right? And that's why I said in 1981, I was the only female chemist surrounded by men with this face and the name So yeah, it is something we cannot stop talking, because if we stop talking, who is going to take this agenda forward? So while we talk about this differences in leadership positions, and I think you've touched upon it a little bit, is what more can we do as organizations? So we have like two facets, right? One is the organization, the educated class, but still there's so much disparity in pay for the same job. A man gets more, a woman gets more, less, and a woman has to be twice or three times better than her counterpart. And you tack it on with being in some other country. I don't know what that number would be. So what can organizations do? That's one part. And then the other part is people like the helpers that come, the domestic help that come to our homes. What can we do for that? Because we need to, although this is attended by everybody who's working, but let's not lose sight of that large population. You probably have the statistics, I don't. But there are so many in our own country. So can you give us some insights? What can organizations do, Anuradha?
Yeah. I think, and I'd say, of course, it's organizations, but I think this is a truth for the world, for the government, for society at large. Ranjana, it is so sad. We are sitting in 2021, but women everywhere as a part of the larger system and policy are viewed as a problem to solve. Now, the truth is, you, me, and everybody on this call, we are assets to this country, we are assets to our organizations, we are assets to society. How do we change the conversation from women as victims to women as assets? And to me, that is the starting point and the first point that will create a more equal conversation for us to be able to take things forward. Till such time that organizations constantly think of how do we solve for the problems that women bring. I'm sorry, these are not problems. It is just the way we look at the world, because the world of work was constructed by men for men. And we have to change that narrative and the construct to become a place that demonstrates the realities of both men and women. So the pandemic, that you refer to is in some senses a great opportunity, because flexible working from home, flexible hours, all of these things, domestic responsibilities, which were only the problem of women, have today been mainstreamed in some way. And I think organizations should seize the opportunity and not let this change with the pandemic being behind us. We have to keep them so that the construct becomes more equal for both men and women. I think other than that, there is one thing that is really poising us so well for a future where women are far more acceptable, or can sort of, not just acceptable, I think be given their due because of what the future of leadership and the future of organizations demands. So the first thing is this whole thing about an unknown environment, right? There is a lot more that we are comfortable with in terms of ambiguity. The second thing is our workforces today are millennials. Mm-hmm. Millennials, or younger workforces, hate hierarchy. They question everything, right? Leading from the front with authority is becoming tougher and tougher. Can you lead more collaboratively? Can you lead from behind? So this whole thing, the movement from being an authoritative leader to being a leader who sort of uses a compass, we are sort of finding the way even as we lead. And this very new notion that I've been reading about, which is the gardener leader. Right? Very little. You can't force a plant to grow. You have to give it everything, and then you have to demonstrate the patience that is required for a plant to bloom. Right? So you can put it in sunlight, you can hope for the rain, you can give it water, you can give it some fertilizer, blah, blah, blah. There is a certain time that things take to happen. Leaders have to find a way to inspire and carry people with them, even as you allow for things that are outside of your control, right? Mm-hmm. So the right environment, you can provide the inputs, but you have to then recognize that You can't whip everything into performing, into growing faster, blah, blah. These are the attributes of the gardener leader: nurturing and nourishing, tending and protecting, watching for growth. You celebrate every new bud. You provide an enabling environment, but you're not directive. You acknowledge your lack of control on an environment. That doesn't mean you give up, but you are able to be vulnerable to the fact that forces of nature have a role to play. Not dictatorial. You respond, for example, like you do to a young adult. And somewhere there's patience without a lack of action. Now, these attributes sound so much more feminine than male. And so the first time these years of conditioning, social and otherwise, and the way things have been divided, I think we are at a point in the world where the stereotype may just give us an advantage for the time being, till such time that we can create this ungendered world. For now, maybe for the next 10, 15 years, I think organizations and women have a playground in front of them where we don't have to correct for women. I think what we bring to the table is going to be hugely beneficial to teams, to organizations, and to society. This is the first time in humankind that the feminine attributes have a strong hand, if not an upper hand. And we are watching it. Look at the women leaders around in the pandemic. It's too early to pronounce victory, but I think the way women leaders have led, whether it is New Zealand, or Iceland, or I think it's Norway or Taiwan, the women have just done a fantastic job of carrying their countries through the pandemic in just a very different way. So I think it was Norway where this woman prime minister recognized what the pandemic was doing to children. They were anxious and they were worried about their parents and their grandparents. So she did a special session for just children to address their fears. How different is that in terms of a way to lead than what we have accepted over the years? So I do think, summing up, it really is one that time will lend itself. But I think it is time for women to put the conversation out as women being assets and organizations recognizing that, as opposed to women as victims and women being a problem to solve. So that would sort of be my top recommendation.
That's a fantastic recommendation, honest to God, because what you have done beautifully and eloquently, first of all, I love the way you said that let's recognize women being assets instead of a problem to solve, victims. So I think that is a problem number one. And also, I liked what you described, the garden leadership. I don't think I've ever heard about the garden leadership. So I consider myself as the servant master leadership, where the leader is the servant and who you're serving is the master, because it just shifts the power.
Yeah. I feel like I'm not saying that these will remain the domain of women. I think men have to embrace these attributes too.
Yes.
So we have to change the way leadership attributes are seen. Because of years of conditioning, we are bringing them to the table, and they now need to become a part of the wholesome leadership attribute, menu list or checklist. And I would hate it if this remained the domain of women, because I do think that this is the need for leadership of the future. And right now, because of the way work is divided and the way things have been, yes, we demonstrate more of them. But in the future, the feminine has to get embraced by everybody.
Yes. And that's key. Thank you for taking the discussion to where it needs to go. Is, hello men, don't be shy. And it's not to say that men don't have these attributes.
Yeah.
I have 2 boys. And I think they're marvelous, very manly, but yet they have all the attributes that you just so beautifully described. And speaking about that is, what do men see women? So it depends on their family structure, how their mothers and sisters and grandmothers have been. They themselves have an idea of what the woman should be like, right? So if you ask my boys what a woman should be, they're like working moms, because that's what they've seen. They've seen a working mom throughout their life. They don't believe in stay-home moms because that's not what they saw. So you were absolutely correct. And in that, we covered another question that we had is, what can we do for our men? How do we include them? Because sometimes they may be forgotten and we don't want to give away what men bring to the table. How do we amalgamate this? And that's what you've been talking about. And I really do like that. Would you like to add some more?
Yeah. I think the first thing is, I mean, of course, all these conversations have to invite, include, and incentivize men to be a part of it. And I think the only way that can happen is if they see the fact that the world we are trying to talk about will be as beneficial to men as it will be to women. And I'll give you a few examples, because I believe the common enemy for both men and women are stereotypes and patriarchy.
Yep.
I don't think patriarchy serves men either.
Right.
Of course, it doesn't serve us, but it doesn't serve men either.
Right.
And I think it damages both. And I want to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about something that I've been hearing a lot about in the last few years, this whole notion of fragile masculinity. And it was brought up very interestingly a couple of years ago when the first time round Donald Trump won in the American elections. There's a very well-known historian at Yale called Peter Snyder, and he spoke about this. Asked him, what are the 3 big trends that are going to shape the world? And he said the top was fragile masculinity. And he said that from the time a boy is 3 or 4 or 5, their entire identity comes from being the provider. And if you and I talk about equality, or the rest of us on this program talk about equality or want equality, how is it okay that the burden of providing sits on half the population?
Yeah.
They can't quit when they want. They can't follow their passion if it doesn't earn money. They can't, just throw their towel in just because they don't have a good boss. Women do that, right? So I do believe that we are brought up believing we have the choice, and I think that's the starting point of a lot of problems on this planet. That girls are brought up believing they have the choice to work or not. My view, controversial it may be, but is that if you have a mouth, you have to know how to feed it. That's your job. You don't have the choice. And to depend on somebody else, you mentioned this at the beginning, destiny, but I talk about it a little bit differently, Ranjana, that dignity and dependence don't go hand in hand. You want to keep your dignity, some strains of that you have to hold in your hands, which is why financial independence is as important as it is. So if women took that seriously and said, I don't have the choice either, I have to work too, I think we would have a more equal world. So we have a very, very important contribution to make to reduce the level of burden and responsibility on the other half. Exactly like men have to step up and share in the responsibilities in the home so that we don't carry that whole responsibility. Right? Now, this world will be better for both. I'll give you one more example. Somebody was giving me statistics of how men are denied custody of kids whenever there is a divorce that is contested. It is very hard for men to get custody. Who has given us the right to say that women are always better parents than men? These are the damaging stereotypes for men. And I think we have to collectively fight stereotypes so that we have a fairer, better, more conducive to equality world for both men and women. Chimamanda Adichie, who's this very, very popular Nigerian writer, she writes, by the way, everybody should read it at CIPLA. There's a book called We Should All Be Feminists. And it's a small read, but it's really an eye-opener for both men and women. She gives an example of Nigerian boys. She says, young black boys are always lumped with reasons of, disruption and sort of disruptive behavior in society. She says, when a 15-year-old boy and a 15-year-old girl start to date, the onus of paying the bill is on the boy.
Yeah.
Neither of them earn. Where are they going to get money from? Now, a 15-year-old boy is so keen to impress the girl he's dating, he will flick money from his dad's wallet, and he becomes criminal. Now, the demands that these stereotypes make on young boys are as damaging as the demands those stereotypes make on young women.
Yeah.
So there is no question in my mind that the world we are hoping to create will be much, much better for both men and women. And that's the reason why men need to be allies in the workplace and women need to be allies in the home space, so that men can access the domestic space and women can access the workplace with equal ease going forward.
Yes, so well said. So well said. So we constantly must try and close the gap in what these stereotypes, these expectations that women may have of themselves, And I say this to many women. Let's say if the family income isn't where it should be, get up, go out and work. So you bring in some of the earnings so you can have a better life. I'm a living example. If you want a better life, don't rely on someone else. You get up and put your shoes on and go out there into the marketplace and do what you do best, is provide for your family, if you have a family, or for yourself. If I couldn't disagree with you even more, I also like the example of why should the boy be the one who puts the bill? These are stereotypes that must be questioned. And I think it's about time that we even discuss it, talk about it, and teach our children at home. Whether you have boys, teach them that. You have girls, teach them that. So I really like that. I also like what advice you gave us with regards to the organizations. And we'll talk about organizations from a different angle. Sometimes men don't want to hire women. I know this for a fact. Because they're like, oh, we hire her, then she's going to go pregnant, she'll go maternity leave, can't work nights and all that. So that's one thing, which is their own view. To tack it on is the government. I mean, in Indore, the rules are such that women can't work beyond certain hours. So it's a problem that has to be tackled from within each one, then the family, community, the government, and of course all those hiring managers that are generally men. Let's say in the pharma world, they feel a woman can't work in manufacturing. Why not? They feel a woman can't be good in marketing because she has to go to the interior and, oh God, how's she going to be protected? Well, change the infrastructure. So there is plenty to be done within our organizations as well, and other organizations, where we can make it more amenable for women to go out. Even though, let's say, she wants to go and bring some bread into the house, we have to make it such that she can do that. And you know what's funny? It's again those stratas. In the highest strata, you'll see certain kinds of behavior. In the middle, you'll see a lot of women going out to work. In the lower, you see all the women are out. All the domestic help are women. So when the question is raised, should we be still discussing it? Thank you for saying that. Yes, because the divide is huge, the ignorance is huge, and there's a lot of work to be done. And we thank people like yourself who continuously are out there training, teaching, listening, hearing, and you learn and you teach, and vice versa. So that's really fantastic. Let me come closer to home a little bit. So tell us a little bit about yourself. What made you start Vedika, and a little bit about yourself in terms of your personal journey. And we'd like to hear, just be a little vulnerable with us.
Yeah, I'm vulnerable all the time, I think. So, I started at the beginning telling you that I grew up this tomboy, and then really the shift came maybe somewhere in my mid to late 30s when I went on this program and realized how different the world was for men and women. And I say this often, but it really was a moment where I said, in this lifetime, I want to pay the privilege that I have had. I want to pay that privilege forward. And that was really the kernel of what Vedika became. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with this idea. There was a lot of conversation about women on boards, women in senior management, and a lot of the focus seemed to be on that. And of course, that's a worthy objective. But as I started looking more, doing some research, talking to people, Ranjana, what became very clear was, how do you get onto a board if you never were in senior management? How do you get a senior management if you weren't in middle management? And the truth is that even as women in India are doing better and better and better on education and higher education and get hired, the leaky pipeline is really 28 to 35. And somewhere we figured that women are being taught to get jobs. We are not teaching our young women how to keep jobs. Nobody told me, even in my very progressive home, nobody told me it was okay to do what I did. You work if you want, marry if you want, have children if you want. If you don't, that's fine too. You were expected, if you came from a progressive home, it was assumed that you will work. But it was equally assumed that you will do everything else that was a part of so-called motherhood. I feel we have to destigmatize choices that are not the norm. Right? So anyway, so there was this thought going on in my head. The second thought was that I started to feel, even as I was meeting, I went to LSR, which is considered a college where women who want careers and a certain significance in society went to study, but most of my class wasn't working, had dropped out of the workforce in a formal sense. And I realized that by the time you get to your 40s or mid 40s, it's not that you regret what you did. Many women regret what they didn't do. This notion of you can be a great mom, then you have to be at home, or if you want to be a great professional, then you can't. I'm sorry, that's a very limited vision of what we are. I really do think you can be a great professional and have a great personal life. And we have to change that for women. Women have to start believing they can have both and then approach their lives. So I started to feel that too many women suffered indignities because they had focused their entire life on other stuff and didn't have money to call their own, didn't have something that was objective in the way to measure their life. I was talking yesterday somewhere, we see ourselves through a gendered lens, as a wife, as a mom, as a daughter-in-law, as a sister, as a friend. So we hand over the reins of our performance into somebody else's hand all the time. If you work, nobody can tell you you didn't patent these things or you didn't bring those many customers. It is way more objective to have a sense of worth, which is why very important to have both. Mm-hmm. So if we want to retain the reins of our dignity in our hands, I had started to believe that financial independence was absolutely key. That if you had to make women financially independent, okay, some people have an inheritance, some people may have savings, but most of us need to work, earn, save, and be financially independent. That brought us to the core of how do we make sure that women join and then stay in the workforce. And that was the second discovery, which is that women are dropping out because they don't know how to stay. Nobody told them you'll have difficult conversations here, how you can have a difficult conversation. You have to navigate these crossroads when you get married or have children because of the society we live in. How do you do that? How do you feel okay about having some ambition and dreams of your own? How do you feel okay about being a mom who doesn't have to attend every piano lesson for their child? Somebody has to tell you it's okay. There have to be role models who come and say, you'll be fine. All of this was missing. And that's really what led to Vedika, where we said, Of course, we will teach you the competencies that you need to be successful, but we will also teach you things that will allow you to navigate the challenges at which point women drop out of the work. And the research showed up that every good management college in the world now had started women's only exec ed programs. What was the curriculum? Negotiation, assertiveness, confidence, executive presence, visibility, networking. Wow! All the things that we don't do. Yeah. So we picked up that curriculum and brought it as a part of things that young women are trained in before they enter the workforce. You don't discover it when you're 37 and then your organization says, you know what, for the next leadership position, you need to go and do all these things. So we are sending our women out into the world with these skills already, preparing them for the challenges, because the world for women is not the same as the world for men. We can have equal opportunities, but we face different challenges. And at least for the next 15, 20, 30 years, I don't think that's going to change completely. We have to chip away at that change. So we have to navigate the world we live in, even as we are building a new world. And that's how Vedika began. We are now, we have, I think, 250 or more alums in the world. But I believe that they go out into the world feeling like they are feminists. They don't feel awkward about being equal. And this is a journey. It's not like, you attend a course and now you're an equal participant in the world. Patriarchy, conditioning is so deep rooted in each one of us that it'll take, we'll be work in progress till we actually die, I think. But at least we are a significant part of that change. And every young woman, and our biggest hope and advantage is these young women who think differently. And I keep my fingers crossed that when they come to crossroads, then they don't become like you and me. Yeah. They are different based on their experiences and the fact that the younger men are also different. So I think we are poised for change. I think there's so much going on that the tipping point will happen in our lifetime. And that really was the core of and I think that the last point, which is women's only, was very thought through. People ask me all the time that, listen, in a world where there are men, aren't you creating an unreal world? No, because men are still around, they are teaching, they are program mentors. We are taking a small sliver in a woman's life to say, think of yourself as a person. You don't have to think of yourself always through a lens through which you're being viewed. This is expected of me. This is what I should do. This is what I shouldn't do. So create an ungendered environment for a little bit so that then you can aspire, plan, and go forward with a dream that is for you as a human being. Then layer it with with gender, as opposed to not allow yourself some choices because you're thinking of yourself as a woman, and then these things are not really available to me, so why think about it? Then we won't challenge the status quo, we won't challenge stereotypes, we won't challenge the norms. And I really feel like the courage you need to do that, I really wish every woman that courage to be herself, really.
Yeah. That is so inspirational. That's a big wow. And once again, you have touched upon things that really matter, which is financial independence. I remember my dad saying to me, study science, because if you have a science degree, you will always have, because healthcare is a recession-proof industry. And boy, was he right. And you also talked about skills and skilling. And you're right. It's like, keep the gender aside, look at the skills. Because I remember, as I mentioned, I was in the US and I had an Indian girl working for me. And every time she'd come and she'd start crying, oh, so-and-so said this, so-and-so said. I'm like, you know what, you're not home. This is not your sister-in-law and brother-in-law and your mother-in-law, These are professionals. This is a professional working environment. So kudos to you. And great job when you are telling these young women that don't look at the lens that somebody else is wearing or what you think you should be doing. How do they navigate in this world with what they have, what you're teaching them, and what the world is demanding if we truly are serious about closing the gap? A lot of what you said is we try to bring within CIPLA, as you see, having this kind of forum, because we are so big on our purpose inspired, our caring for life, and how do we care for life? It's not a poster. We don't want it to be a poster. We want it to be something like what you said, is skill our people. Were there any closing thoughts that you had on this, Anuradha, on how do we make our organization more inclusive?
You know, the conversations, keeping the conversations going, men and allies, all of that is there. But I do want to mention 4 very quick points, because so that we don't lose this time in the world for the change to continue, and both men and women to realize the reality of this environment. And I would say, like you said, that women have to keep the conversation going, because we are challenging the status quo in the workplace. So, you know, there are 4 things that I talk about. One is what I call the poison of privilege. And I mean, I'm a victim, and I hope that other people don't. And sometimes, you know, senior women leaders, I think, are the worst demonstrators of this. That if I could do it, so can somebody else. Right? And I think we have to be very, very conscious.
Yes.
Each time we are in a good place, we have to know that we are fortunate. Somebody else may not be. What can I do to still make this possible for someone else who doesn't have that privilege? The second, which is very commonly spoken about, is this double bind, right? Women suffer from something called the double bind. What we are loved for and liked for and respected for in our homes is the exact opposite of the workplace. So I often give this example that, you know, if your child is going away to boarding school and you don't shed a tear, you'll be considered like this heartless cow. And if you cry at the workplace, it's complete taboo, right? How do I switch between being this caring, nurturing person and this, you know, hard-nosed professional? And I think unless the workplace embraces the fact that we will bring our empathy and our vulnerability into the workplace. You know, if there are 5 men and 5 women in a boardroom, tears will be as acceptable as loud voices. No extreme emotions, little bit of both. So I think that's the second thing, that the double bind has to end consciously, and both men and women have to make that effort in the workplace. The third is this belief that we are fortunate to have the choice. I think this has to go out of the window. This notion of choice actually really goes against us and our progress. We have to know that it is as much our responsibility to create more in this world than less, in both spaces, in the home and in the workplace. So I think that's the third thing. And the last thing is, you know, people like me who were gender neutral and were very proud of it. I don't think this is the time to be gender neutral. I think we have to be not just, you know, there are levels in it. There's gender blind, there's gender neutral, there's gender aware, and then there's gender transformative. And I think we all have to aspire to be gender transformative, where we recognize both the advantages and the downsides of the way stereotypes affect men and women, and continue to chip away and change it. And I think if all of us collectively do these 3-4 things, we will definitely have organizations where we won't have to have these conversations, I hope, over the coming decade.
You have been phenomenal. You've been a trailblazer. And my gosh, I wish we could all stand and give you a standing ovation. You've taught us so many things. I love the garden leadership. I like the fact that you said, stop being a victim, be an asset, you know, get yourself skilled, you know, challenge the stereotypes. What are these perceptions? You have been absolutely fantastic. And I hope we have many more discussions like this, and you continue to serve our nation, our world. The young women and the men will also learn, you know, I'm sure the next time we meet, it'll be Vedika for all, you know, because...
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. Absolute pleasure. And thank you for all the warmth and the kindness. Really, I'm very grateful.
Absolutely. Caring for life.
And happy Women's Day, everyone.
Absolutely. Same to you. And I'd like to end by telling my colleagues is that keep your eye on the pie, be true to yourself, and reach the highest potential that you can reach. Compete only with yourself. Happy Women's Day to everybody. Anuradha, thank you.
Thank you so much.
I want to say Jai Hind. I love that.
Thank you. Jai
Take
Hind.
care.
Thank you.
God
Thank
bless.
you.
Thank you. See you
Bye-bye.
soon.